What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. So something we've done for the last several years is try to predict where College Game Day is going to go each week of the season. And honestly, these predictions have not been great. It doesn't usually go the way we think it's going to go. The season doesn't usually go the way we think it's going to go. And then some of the decisions they make are just not what you'd expect as you get into the season. But this is the last stop here before we get to predictions. Yes, starting on Tuesday, the day after Memorial Day, we will start our predictions, go through every single Power 4 team. That's kind of been the tradition there, again, to start on the day after Memorial Day to kick off summer there with our predictions. So let's get into the game day predictions, and we don't have to make a prediction for week one. It's going to be Notre Dame, Texas A&M on August 31st, week one. They've already announced this. This is going to be the primetime ABC game. And I agree with this selection. I think it's the biggest game of week one, and I'm really looking forward to this matchup. I think I said this the other day. The winner of this game, I think, has a really, really good shot to make the college football playoff. The loser, maybe not out of it, but it's going to be a lot tougher for them, obviously. And so one of the things that we do, and I know that sometimes they go to the same location more than once. It's rare, but they have done it. But when I do my predictions, I do not have the same location on here twice. It's just kind of a rule that I put into place when making these predictions. And so keep that in mind, because there was a game or maybe two games that I thought Texas A&M could have gotten later in the season. And we'll talk about the different possibilities. But we're going to give the predictions here. And let's go to week two now. It's Texas versus Michigan. Now, this is not going to be an ESPN or ABC game, but I just don't think they pass this one up. If they are going to go with a game that's on their network, which I don't think they're going to only do ABC and ESPN games, because there are too many big games in the Big Ten, and they're not going to be showing Big Ten games on ESPN or ABC. So I don't think they're going to totally avoid the Big Ten. That would be a real surprise. If they do that, then obviously all the Big Ten selections we have here in the video, you can ignore those. But if they didn't go to the Big Ten, I think it would be NC State, Tennessee. That should be a pretty big non-conference game there. But Texas, Michigan, that's a huge game. You got the defending national champions against a top 10 team in Texas. It's kind of a no-brainer. So I think they go there for that game. Let's go to week three now, September 14th. Now, there were not a lot of great selections here. I'm going with Georgia, Kentucky. It's already been assigned as the primetime game on ABC, so it kind of makes sense in that way. You've got Alabama, Wisconsin, but that's going to be a big noon game, and it's not a huge game. It's a big game. It's a really, really big game, but I wouldn't say it's like a can't-miss game day type game. And with it being a big noon kickoff, I'm going to say they don't go to that one. If they wanted to maybe go somewhere else, you look at Kansas State. We've got Arizona at Kansas State this week. That's a big game in the Big 12, but I think at the end of the day, they're going to stick to the SEC, go to Kentucky for this Georgia-Kentucky matchup. But like I said, not really many great options for week three. Week four, we've got Utah versus Oklahoma State. This is, I think, the biggest regular season game in the Big 12, so I think they'll go to this one. You've also got Tennessee at Oklahoma. Oklahoma opening up with their first SEC game. That'll be a huge game. I could see them going there. I have Oklahoma later in the season, though, so maybe that would be an option here for sure. Again, it's tough. It's really tough with some of these. You've got UCLA, LSU this week. You've got USC, Michigan, but we just used Michigan. So I'm going to go with Utah, Oklahoma State, Big 12 matchup. But again, if they don't go there, I think it's going to be Tennessee versus Oklahoma for week four. Let's go to week five now, September 28th. This one's probably the easiest one of them all. Georgia, Alabama. It's already an ABC primetime game. They're going there, no doubt about it. You've also got Arizona, Utah that week, Oklahoma State, Kansas State that week, Louisville, Notre Dame. So some pretty big games, but yeah, this is a no-brainer. It's going to be Georgia, Alabama, in my opinion, for week five. Week six, we've got Clemson versus Florida State. This will be a big game in the ACC. You've also got West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Iowa at Ohio State. That one could be pretty big. Missouri, Texas A&M, if Texas A&M maybe is still undefeated at this point. So, yeah, I mean, there are other options, but I think they probably go Clemson, Florida State. That's probably going to wind up being the primetime game as well. So we're going with that for week six. On to week seven, Ohio State, Oregon. This one seems like an obvious pick as well. Again, unless they just are avoiding the Big Ten. This is going to be a huge game. Top five matchup more than likely. There are a lot of big games on week 7. Week 7 is going to be good. You've also got Ole Miss at LSU. That's going to be a big game. You've got Penn State at USC. That's a big one. And then Texas, Oklahoma for the first time in the SEC. If they are avoiding the Big Ten, I think Texas, Oklahoma is probably where they go. They've gone there many, many times, and it's not at an actual state. It's not at a school, so you got the neutral site there, and so it's not going to use up one of those teams' locations. But I think Ohio State, Oregon, I mean, again, it's top 5 matchup. Really hard to pass that one up. Let's go to week 8 now. Georgia versus Texas. This will be maybe the biggest game in the SEC this year. I think most people have these two teams ranked the highest in the conference. So that's kind of a no-brainer. You got Alabama, Tennessee that week, Miami, Louisville, Kansas State, West Virginia. But, yeah, this one, it's pretty obvious. They're going to go to Texas here for this big matchup. Week 9, we got Florida State at Miami. This was a tough one. There are a lot of good games this week. I went with this one at the end of the day. But look out for Kansas State. If these teams are maybe both ranked, that could be a fun one for them to go to. So I wouldn't be surprised if they went to Kansas State. You've got Penn State, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M. A lot of big games in the SEC that week. But I'm going to go with Florida State, Miami here for week 9. Let's go to week 10 now. We've got Ohio State, Penn State. I think Penn State gets game day here. Other options are Oregon and Michigan. That's a huge one as well. But I think, again, we use Michigan with week 2, Texas, Michigan. Louisville at Clemson could be a sneaky pick here if they don't want to go to the Big Ten. If Ohio State, Penn State turns into a big noon kickoff and they don't want to go there. But I'm going to go with this matchup here. Ohio State, Penn State for week 10. Week 11, we got Georgia, Ole Miss. Seems like we've seen a lot of Georgia as the away team. We haven't seen them as the home team yet. But I think Georgia, Ole Miss, huge game in the SEC if Ole Miss is as good as what people expect. But, man, you got Alabama, LSU this week. That is a hard one to pass up as well. You got Florida State at Notre Dame. You got Oklahoma, Missouri, Clemson, and Virginia Tech. This is a huge week. And, again, this was tough. I originally was thinking maybe Alabama, LSU. But if you kind of go through the season, I think Georgia and Ole Miss will be ranked higher than Alabama, LSU at this point. And so I went with this matchup here for week 11. Let's go to week 12 now. Finally, Georgia gets a home game. I think Tennessee, Georgia is what game is going to get game day here. There were not a lot of options for week 12. Again, we were talking about Georgia. They've got at Ole Miss. We had Georgia at Texas. We had Georgia potentially at Kentucky. Georgia at Alabama. So 4 games for Georgia on the road that could get game day. And then finally they get a home game here. I'm going to go Tennessee, Georgia. The other matchup here, and this is really dependent, I think, on Colorado and how good their season goes. But Utah, Colorado could be the pick here if Colorado turns out to be good this season. If they are, sitting there with only 2 or 3 losses and Utah is a top 10 team, yeah, I could see them go to Colorado for that. Just, the ESPN loves Colorado and Deion Sanders and all that. So I could see them maybe going there, but I don't know that Colorado is going to be that good, and I'm going to go with Tennessee, Georgia for week 12. Let's go to week 13 now. Now, this one, I changed my pick. So I'm going Texas A&M, Auburn in this game, and I don't want to give away my predictions, so I don't want to say where I think these teams are going to be. But the other matchup was Alabama, Oklahoma. So it was Alabama, Oklahoma, or Texas A&M, Auburn. I think that's where game day winds up here. There's not a lot of other big games, really, and these games aren't huge. But you look at Alabama and the schedule that they'll have to play up to this point, they're probably going to have potentially a couple losses. Oklahoma's probably going to have 2 or 3 losses. Texas A&M has a really favorable schedule. I think they could be sitting here with maybe just 1 loss or maybe even undefeated potentially. I know everybody thinks I'm too high on Texas A&M, but just look at the schedule and tell me who's going to beat them. Who's going to give them more than 2 losses at this point. And you look at Auburn, they've also got a favorable schedule. I think they could be here with maybe just a couple of losses. So you could be looking at two loss teams potentially. Maybe one of them has 3. I don't know. So Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Auburn, flip a coin because it's really, I think, just going to come down to how good the teams are. And I just think there's potential out of those 4 teams, Alabama, Oklahoma, Auburn, and Texas A&M. I think there's potential for Texas A&M to be ranked the highest of those 4 teams with their schedule. I think they could maybe only have 1 loss at this point. And so we're going to go with the Aggies going on the road to face Auburn. That could be a great atmosphere for a primetime game. And again, it's not necessarily that I think Auburn's going to be a top 10 team or anything like that. I just think it's more about Texas A&M and the success that I think they're going to have, and then going on the road to face probably a ranked Auburn team here in Week 13. Week 14, Michigan, Ohio State, the game. I actually think Texas A&M is the better pick, and I think that could be possibly, I don't know. It's tough, and now that I'm looking at all of my games, I think I might have changed a pick because I didn't go with Texas A&M because I had Texas A&M somewhere else. I thought maybe against LSU Week 9, and then I switched that. So yeah, I think maybe Texas A&M winds up getting game day here, especially with the big noon kickoff for Michigan, Ohio State. It's really just going to depend on the success of especially Texas A&M and maybe Texas. And so again, I had LSU Texas A&M for Week 9, and that's why I switched my pick to Michigan, Ohio State. But now that I'm looking back, now that we've switched Week 9 to Florida State, Miami, maybe we do go back to Texas A&M. This one is another game, another week that's really a toss-up. So I think it's going to be Michigan, Ohio State, or Texas A&M, and it really just depends on the success of these teams. The safer pick is Michigan, Ohio State. I think Texas A&M a little bit more risky. These two teams, you figure, will be right there in the discussion at the end of the season. Ohio State definitely, I think, will be in the playoff picture. Michigan maybe right there on the edge, possibly in or out. And so, yeah, it's two great games. Michigan, Ohio State, Texas A&M. And with Texas and Texas A&M not having played in so long, that could very well be where game day winds up. So either one there. And then finally for the conference championship Saturday, I think they go to the SEC championship, no doubt about that. So those are my game day predictions. Again, it was tough. I maybe would even, again, I'm second guessing things right now as I'm going through the video. After I had decided on Ohio State, Michigan, now I'm starting to think maybe Texas A&M would be better for Week 14. There are just a lot of great games and a lot of tough decisions that they're going to have to make. And again, at the end of the day, it's going to depend on how successful these teams are as the season goes along. But I would love to get your predictions. Give me your predictions for every single week for where you think game day is going to go. Let me know down in the comments below.